Right now, in hospitals all around the world, there's this really quiet but deeply unsettling consensus building among the exact people who operate our most advanced life support technology.
Right, the people actually running the machines.
Exactly. Over 80% of these medical workers, the people literally running the machines that can keep a human body breathing indefinitely, they're saying that when it's their turn, they want those machines turned off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they want the right to halt their own treatment because working at the absolute bleeding edge of science has made them realize something pretty jarring, which is, well, just because technology can break a human limit doesn't actually mean it should.
That is such a profound starting point because that same friction, that tension between what the tech can do and what we can handle,
Hmm.
it isn't just happening in intensive care units.
No, not at all.
It's happening in your living room and at your desk, in your pocket right now. We are basically living through this massive, completely invisible collision between the exponential curve of technological progress and the very static, very stubborn realities of the human nervous system.
And that is the exact lens we're using today. Our mission for this deep dive is to completely reframe the exhaustion you feel at the end of a Tuesday.
Yeah, that 3 p.m. wall everyone hits.
Right. If you are entirely drained by this, like unyielding pressure to upgrade your apps, to learn the latest generative AI workflows, to constantly optimize your calendar, you are not broken.
You're not falling behind.
Exactly. You are not falling behind. We are going to unpack the hidden psychological and biological toll of this obsession with constant progress. And we're going to explore why choosing to embrace inefficiency, like choosing analog or retro habits, is actually one of those highly sophisticated, rational survival strategies you can deploy right now.
And we've got a lot of ground to cover to explain that. We're going to look at this through a really multidisciplinary lens today, pulling from Adlerian psychology.
Which is fascinating, by the way.
It really is. We'll use that to understand why we shame people who can't keep up. We're also diving into the neuroscience of decision fatigue, checking out corporate culture trends from Japan, and ultimately looking at the actual neurochemistry of nostalgia.
Because it's not just about missing the good old days, right?
Right, because our relationship with our screens, it's not really about convenience anymore. It has literally morphed into an evolutionary bottleneck.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because to really understand the bottleneck, I think we have to look at the baseline assumption that our entire modern society operates on right now.
The unwritten rule.
Yeah, this fiercely protected rule that adapting to new technology is just an absolute moral good, full stop.
Right, it's unquestionable.
If you're adopting the newest software, if you're like integrating the latest AI into your workflow, society deems you a productive, forward-thinking member. You are virtuous.
You're one of the good ones. But the corollary to that, which is where things get very dark, is how we view the people who don't adopt.
Because if adaptation is a moral good,
Then hesitation is a moral failing. There's a term that's gained significant traction in Japanese discourse recently, rogai.
Rogai, yeah.
It translates roughly to old fools or elderly menace, but its modern usage has actually evolved way past just age. It's wielded as this weaponized label against anyone who stubbornly clings to old ways.
Anyone who drags down the efficiency.
Exactly. Anyone who supposedly drags down the digital efficiency of the collective.
It's a brutal concept, honestly. You aren't just viewed as slow or, a bit old-fashioned. You were actively categorized as a societal nuisance,
Yeah.
like a toxic element in the machinery of progress.
A literal menace.
Right, and we're seeing this play out very aggressively in the corporate world through the concept of reskilling, which, when I think of reskilling historically, I think of an entire industry shifting like when auto manufacturing became automated.
Right, the factory changes.
Yeah, and a government or a union steps in and says, okay, the landscape changed, so we are going to structurally support you and retrain you so you don't lose your livelihood.
It was a safety net.
It was meant to be structural support, yes. But in the current hyper-digital environment, especially highlighted in recent analyses of Japanese corporate culture, that concept has been deeply twisted.
How so?
Reskilling is no longer a systemic safety net. It's been inverted into an individual behavioral mandate. The burden has been completely offloaded from the corporation right onto the individual worker.
So it's not we will train you, it's you better train yourself.
Exactly. It's no longer about the company investing in you. It's about you constantly proving you deserve to stay.
So it basically becomes a test of your attitude. Like the actual goal of what you're learning is almost secondary, isn't it?
It's totally ambiguous.
Right. You might be told to learn some new project management platform that the company just abandoned 6 months later. But the point wasn't the platform. The point was you displaying the posture of learning.
The willingness to bend over backwards. Exactly. If you aren't grinding on your weekends to master the latest AI prompt engineering course, you aren't just lacking a skill, you are judged as lacking motivation. You are a potential rogue-eye.
And this creates just a pervasive atmosphere of precariousness. It's this exhausting treadmill where the speed keeps increasing, and if you stumble, well, it is entirely your fault.
But this raises a huge question for me. Why do we so easily accept this system? Like, why do workers turn on each other, labeling their colleagues as outdated or nuisances instead of, I don't know, pushing back against the impossible pace of the technology itself?
That is exactly where the Adlerian psychology comes into play, and it is so revealing.
I found this part so fascinating. So Alfred Adler, unlike Freud, who looked backward at your past to explain your behavior, Adler looked forward.
Right, he was all about the end goal.
Right, he believed our behaviors are goal-oriented. We actually create emotions to serve a specific purpose. And in hyper-competitive environments, Adlerian theory suggests that people begin to view their peers not as colleagues, but as enemies.
Yes. When the standard for success is a constantly moving technological target, everybody feels like an imposter.
Oh, completely.
Everyone secretly feels like they are just one major software update away from becoming totally obsolete. And that is an incredibly painful, vulnerable state to live in.
So because I'm terrified of becoming the loser in this tech race, I desperately need to, like, manufacture a loser below me.
You need someone to point at.
I need someone to look down on. The anger and the judgment we direct at the person who can't figure out the new Slack integration, or the person who prefers an analog filing system, that anger serves a purpose.
It's a defense mechanism.
Exactly. Born out of our own fragile superiority.
Precisely. By harshly judging them, by labeling them a nuisance, you're really just trying to validate your own precarious position. You say to yourself, well, I might be struggling to keep my head above water, but at least I'm not that person. At least I'm adapting.
But dismissing people who struggle with tech as harmful, I mean, that is a massive societal blind spot.
It really is.
Because it treats exhaustion and non-adaptation as an individual moral failing. We point the finger at the person, rather than recognizing that their struggle is a perfectly natural symptom of a system that is demanding way, way too much from our biology.
It's a systemic denial of our own physical limits. We are ignoring a structural exhaustion that is affecting all of us.
Okay, I have to push back here for just a second, just to represent the inner monologue I know you listening might be having right now.
Go for it.
Because it's easy to say, well, the world changes. Humans have always adapted. I mean, we went from the plow to the steam engine, from typewriters to desktop computers, and now from search engines to AI. Isn't learning new skills just the basic price of admission for having a job in the modern world? Why is the expectation to just keep up fundamentally broken?
It's the exact rationalization we all use. But the expectation is broken because the timeline has totally decoupled from human biological capacity.
Meaning the speed of change.
Exactly. Think about it. The transition from the agricultural plow to the steam engine took centuries. Society could organically adjust over generations.
Right.
The transition from the typewriter to the desktop computer took a generation. People had decades to adapt their workflows.
And now?
The transition from early artificial intelligence to paradigm-shifting generative AI models is taking months, sometimes weeks.
So we are hitting a hard, physical bottleneck. Yeah. It's not about willingness anymore. It's about hardware. The literal biological hardware of the human brain.
Exactly. And to understand why that hardware is failing, we really need to look at the sheer volume of processing we're demanding of it.
The data on this is actually terrifying.
Right.
We are unconsciously making about 35,000 decisions every single day.
It is a staggering volume.
And we aren't talking about 35,000 deep philosophical choices here.
Yeah.
We're talking about micro decisions.
Right. Tiny little splits in the road.
Let's just walk through a normal morning. Your alarm goes off. Do you hit snooze or wake up? That's decision one. You grab your phone. Do you open email, Instagram, or the news? Decision two.
And then inside the email.
Right. You open email. Do you archive this newsletter, read it, or leave it unread? Decision 3, 4, 5. A notification drops down from a group chat. Do you swipe it away or reply?
The onslaught starts immediately.
By the time you've poured your coffee, you've already executed hundreds of rapid-fire micro-decisions.
Which introduces the neurological concept of choice overload. The digital environment is explicitly engineered to present us with an endless, cascading waterfall of micro-choices.
Because they think more choice is better, right?
Right. The prevailing tech philosophy is that giving the user infinite options is empowering, but neurologically, it is paralyzing. Every single choice burns a microscopic amount of glucose in the brain. Over time, it severely degrades our optimal decision-making abilities.
Because our brains only have so much RAM. Like, we have a hard limit on our working memory.
Right. Cognitive science relies heavily on a concept often referred to as Miller's Law, which establishes that the human brain's working memory can generally only hold about 7 pieces of information at a time.
Wait, just 7?
7 plus or minus 2. So realistically, between 5 and 9 items. If I read you a list of numbers, you can probably hold about 7 in your head long enough to write them down. But after that, things fall out.
I always think about the juggler at a circus. Like, a skilled juggler can easily keep 3 balls in the air. At 5, they're concentrating. At 7, they're sweating.
And at 8.
If you throw an 8th or 9th ball into the mix, they don't just drop the new ball. The entire pattern collapses and all the balls hit the floor.
That is exactly what is happening in our prefrontal cortex. Now, take that biological limit of 7 items and apply it to what modern labor analysts call the infinite workday. Look at your computer screen right now. You likely have a spreadsheet open, 3 different email chains you're monitoring, a Slack channel blinking with a red dot, a text message from your partner on your phone, and a calendar reminder popping up in the corner.
You are constantly forcing the juggler to handle 10 balls.
And because of this, our working memory isn't just full, it is saturated 24 hours a day. But the real damage doesn't even come from just holding the items. The real damage comes from what neuroscientists call the switching cost.
This is the killer. Because we aren't actually multitasking, are we? We're just rapid switching.
Precisely. True multitasking is largely a myth. When you shift your attention from that deep focused spreadsheet to quickly answer the blinking Slack message and then try to go back to the spreadsheet, your brain cannot just resume where it left off.
It has to reset.
It has to violently clear its working memory, load the context of the Slack message, execute a decision, clear the memory again, and then painstakingly reload the complex parameters of the spreadsheet.
It's like shutting down and restarting your computer every 3 minutes. The energy required just to boot up the system consumes massive amounts of cognitive fuel.
Massive amounts.
And when you do this hundreds of times a day, your brain enters a state of profound depletion. If you feel exhausted at 3 p.m., even though you've just been sitting at a desk, this is why. Your brain is literally redlining.
Researchers are increasingly referring to this state as AI brain fry. It's a colloquial term, sure, but it describes a very serious physiological state. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for impulse control, long-term planning, and emotional regulation, essentially goes offline.
Your shuts down.
Yep. Your amygdala takes over, your stress hormones like cortisol spike, and you are left in a state of hypervigilant exhaustion.
And the physical and psychological toll of this is everywhere if you look at the survey data. Like, over 80% of women report physical issues specifically linked to digital device usage. We're talking chronic eye strain, severe postural issues, and deeply fragmented sleep quality.
The physical symptoms are the body's alarm bells. But the psychological symptoms, those are even more complex.
There's this intense obsession with efficiency that has just taken over everything. In Japan, they refer to it as taipa, which is short for time performance.
Right, type it.
It's basically the cultural equivalent of ROI, return on investment, but applied to every waking second of your personal life. It's watching movies on 1.5 speed. It's listening to podcasts while answering emails on the treadmill. 90% of heavy digital users report obsessing over taipa. They feel this agonizing need to maximize their time.
But here is the critical contradiction in that data. 70% of those exact same people, the ones obsessing over time performance, state that they desperately wish they could live a life without worrying about it.
Wow. They hate the very thing they're doing.
Exactly.
They aren't optimizing their lives because it brings them joy or fulfillment. They are doing it out of a pure sense of survival. They are trapped in a behavioral loop they actively want to escape.
And it is so vital to note that this is not isolated to one demographic. The prevailing myth is that digital overload is mostly a problem for older generations struggling to adapt.
Right, we just assume Gen Z is perfectly fine because they're digital natives. But the data shatters that completely. Yes, 50% of Gen Z report severe SNS fatigue, social networking service fatigue. But a staggering 53% of all adults over the age of 26 feel that exact same fatigue.
The rates are actually higher in the older, supposedly more established adult cohorts.
And I found this stat particularly wild. 92.4% of people in their 30s feel intense, measurable anxiety when they are separated from their smartphones.
Almost everyone.
Almost everyone. Why, the 30-somethings, why is that specific cohort redlining so hard?
Well, if we theorize on the mechanisms behind that, people in their 30s and early 40s represent a very unique bridge generation. They're elder millennials.
Yeah.
They remember an analog childhood. They know what it feels like to leave the house and be genuinely unreachable. But they entered their prime career and parenting years exactly as the smartphone and the always-on corporate culture became mandatory.
The worst possible timing.
Exactly. They are bearing the maximum weight of adult responsibilities, mortgages, children, management roles, while simultaneously being the first generation forced to navigate those pressures without any protected, disconnected downtime.
Yeah.
Their nervous systems are caught between two worlds.
It's the perfect storm of burnout.
Yeah.
So let's step back and look at the macro picture here for a second. Because this biological bottleneck we are hitting forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question.
Okay.
If our brains and bodies are crashing under this digital load, are we actually evolving alongside our technology, or are we actively devolving?
This is the core philosophical tension we are facing right now. We have to clearly separate the two timelines. Biological evolution is agonizingly slow. It relies on genetic mutations and environmental pressures over tens of thousands of years.
Right.
Technological evolution, on the other hand, is exponential, and it's moving toward a highly theoretical but widely discussed point known as the singularity.
The singularity, usually pegged around the year 2045, right?
Yeah.
Where artificial intelligence becomes capable of recursive self-improvement.
Yes?
It gets smarter, which allows it to build a smarter version of itself over and over until the rate of technological change becomes literally incomprehensible to the human mind.
Exactly. Technology is accelerating on a vertical curve, entirely ignoring our biological speed limits. And biology operates on a very ruthless principle: use it or lose it.
Right.
Whether it's muscle fiber, bone density, or synaptic pathways in the brain. If a system isn't challenged, the body stops sending resources to it and it atrophies.
So because we don't have to remember phone numbers anymore, our raw cognitive recall weakens. Because we rely on GPS to navigate our own neighborhoods, our spatial awareness and internal mapping skills degrade.
You don't even have to know how to spell or structure a sentence anymore because the AI auto-completes our thoughts for us.
Right. We are outsourcing our baseline cognitive functions. We are becoming deeply physically dependent on external systems just to perform daily life.
But I do want to explore a really fascinating counterpoint to this, because it isn't purely a story of devolution. Technology does something very unique here. It separates our raw ability from our physical interface.
Oh, this is a crucial nuance. Explain that.
Think of an aging biologist. This person might have 40 years of unmatched, brilliant insights into cellular structures. Their raw cognitive ability, their pattern recognition is at its absolute peak. But their physical interface, their eyes are failing due to age.
Right.
Historically, their career would simply be over. The brilliant mind would be trapped behind a failing physical mechanism.
But today, because of high-resolution digital monitors, magnification software, and AI-assisted imaging, that biologist can completely bypass their failing eyes. They can continue to apply their raw intelligence to the world.
In that context, the technology isn't causing devolution at all. It is facilitating a shift. It allows intelligence to be applied independently of physical degradation. It's honestly a beautiful extension of human potential.
It is. It really is. But, and this is a massive but, what happens when we take that exact same concept of bypassing the physical body and push it to its absolute logical extreme?
This brings us right to the realm of medical ethics.
Yes, which ties perfectly back into that hospital statistic we started with. This part of the research stopped me dead in my tracks.
It forces us to confront the darkest side of our technological capabilities. End-of-life medical care has reached a point where the technology can entirely usurp the biology. A patient might suffer a catastrophic event where their brain ceases meaningful function and their organs begin to fail. Biologically, the organism is at the end of its life.
But technologically,
Technologically, we have machines that can force the lungs to inflate, force the heart to pump blood, and artificially feed the digestive tract. We can sustain biological life, at least in terms of respiration and heartbeat, long past the point of any natural survival.
and long past the point of any meaningful human recovery. We have successfully broken the ultimate biological limit.
We have. But the survey data on this reveals a profound societal dread regarding that success. When asked about their own hypothetical end-of-life care, 74% of the general public stated they want the right to halt painful, life-prolonging treatments if there's no hope of recovery.
And then you look at the medical workers, the doctors, the nurses, the technicians who operate this miraculous technology every single day.
Yeah.
Over 80% of them want that same right to pull the plug. Over 80% of the people running the machines are saying, please do not subject me to this.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the implication is staggering. It proves, unequivocally, that just because technology can break a biological limit, it doesn't mean that doing so aligns with human happiness, with dignity, or with what it fundamentally means to be alive.
Right.
The machine is succeeding flawlessly at its task, but the human being trapped inside the system is suffering.
It really makes me think of astronauts living on the International Space Station.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, in zero gravity, life is technically effortless. There is no friction. You just float from module to module. But that lack of friction is incredibly toxic to the human body. Without the constant heavy resistance of gravity, their bones literally dissolve, their muscles waste away. They have to spend 2 hours a day strapped to a treadmill with bungee cords just to simulate the friction of Earth. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be able to stand up when they get home.
That is a brilliant analogy. Our modern digital environment is zero gravity. It has become so convenient, so frictionless, that our physical and mental muscles are wasting away without us even realizing it.
But that leads to the million-dollar question. If we know this environment is degrading us, if we know we are burning out our working memory, stressing our nervous systems, and atrophying our abilities, why can't we just put the phones down?
It seems so simple.
Right. Why can't we just close the laptop at 5 p.m. and walk away?
Because we are not dealing with a simple bad habit here. We are dealing with a system that has fundamentally hijacked our neurochemistry. The design of our digital ecosystem is structurally manipulative, and it leverages some of our most primal psychological vulnerabilities.
I want to tread carefully here because we are going to use some clinical terms, but the psychological framework we're about to explore is incredibly illuminating.
It really pulls the curtain back.
The constant pressure to adapt, the sheer terror of missing a notification, the need to check your feed psychiatrically, this functions almost exactly like obsessive-compulsive disorder.
OCD. It is a severe anxiety disorder, and mapping its mechanics onto our digital behavior explains perfectly why we feel so trapped. To understand this, we have to break down the two components of OCD: the obsession and the compulsion.
Okay, let's break that down.
The obsession is the intrusive, distressing anxiety. It's the thought that something terrible is going to happen and you just can't stop thinking about it. To temporarily relieve that agonizing anxiety, the person performs a repetitive action. That is the compulsion.
And this isn't just psychological, it's neurological.
Exactly. Neurologically, this loop involves imbalances in serotonin and intense overactivity in specific brain regions, primarily the prefrontal cortex and the striatum, which are heavily involved in habit formation and reward processing.
So the obsession is the fear, and the compulsion is the physical action you take to turn off the fear, even if it's only for a few minutes. Like the classic example of fearing contamination. So you wash your hands 30 times a day.
Correct. Now let's map those exact neurological pathways onto your smartphone. The digital space heavily targets the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain involved in learning and memory. Imagine we're sitting on your couch trying to read a book and your phone buzzes on the table. Immediately, you feel a spike of anxiety.
What if it's my boss? What if it's an emergency? What if I'm missing out on an important cultural moment?
Exactly. That anxiety, that intrusive thought, is the obsession.
So you reach over, pick up the phone, and check the screen. You clear the little red notification badge.
You perform the compulsion, and for a brief second, you feel a hit of relief. The anxiety drops. But here is the critical, destructive part of the cycle. By doing that hundreds of times a day, your hippocampus learns a deeply faulty neurological loop.
What does it learn?
It learns, if I do not check this screen constantly, I am unsafe. The only way to alleviate my anxiety is to obey the machine. You cement a literal compulsion loop into your neurobiology.
We are unconsciously training our brains to be terrified of disconnection. We think we're just staying informed, but biologically, we're just scratching a pathological itch.
We are feeding the compulsion. And the more you feed a compulsion, the stronger the obsession grows.
So how do you break a loop that deep? If our culture is enforcing a mass, low-grade OCD, What is the actual treatment for that?
In clinical psychology, the gold standard treatment for breaking an OCD loop is a therapy called exposure and response prevention, or ERP.
How does ERP actually work in practice?
ERP involves intentionally exposing the patient to the thing that triggers their anxiety, the obsession, and then actively, consciously choosing not to perform the compulsion.
Okay, so going back to the hand washing.
So returning to the contamination fear. The therapy might involve having the patient touch a public doorknob. The obsession screams at them that they are contaminated. The urge to wash their hands is completely overwhelming, but the therapy requires them to just sit there with the agonizing anxiety and not wash their
You
hands.
just have to sit in the fire and let the alarm bells ring in your head.
Yes, because if you sit there long enough, something miraculous happens in the brain. The brain realizes that the catastrophic event it was predicting didn't happen. You touched the doorknob, you didn't wash your hands, and you didn't die. The anxiety naturally peaks, and then without the compulsion, it slowly subsides. The brain relearns that it is safe. It breaks the faulty loop.
Here's where it gets really interesting because this completely changes how we should look at the concept of a digital detox.
Exactly. A digital detox is so often marketed as this trendy, superficial wellness retreat. You go to a cabin, drink green juice, and don't look at Instagram for a weekend.
Right? It's treated like a spa day.
But biologically, when you intentionally turn off your notifications, when you see a Slack message come in on a Friday night and you consciously choose not to answer it, you are performing self-administered cognitive behavioral therapy. You are engaging in ERP.
You are touching the doorknob and refusing to wash your hands.
Yeah.
You are feeling the anxiety of, oh God, my boss is going to be mad, but you just sit with it. And eventually Monday morning comes and you realize the world didn't end. You teach your brain that ignoring the digital noise will not result in a catastrophe.
You reclaim your neurological safety. Which brings us to the most actionable, empowering part of this entire discussion.
Okay, let's hear it.
If constantly keeping up is a culturally enforced compulsion loop, how do we rebuild our long-term resistance?
This leads us right to the resurgence of analog culture, the deep appreciation for retro things.
This is where the narrative completely shifts from playing defense to playing offense.
Right. Because typically, if you see someone buying a vinyl record, or shooting photos on a fully mechanical film camera, or insisting on physically driving to a bookstore instead of buying an ebook online, society tends to view that as cute.
A bit quirky.
Yeah, we view it as a little hipster, or maybe just a sign of nostalgia from someone who is overwhelmed and running away from the modern world.
But the research argues the exact opposite. Embracing analog isn't a sign of weakness or losing the tech race. It is a profound, healthy, and highly active defense mechanism against societal exhaustion.
To understand why, we have to look at Dr. John Medina's research on nostalgia. Because nostalgia isn't just a warm, fuzzy feeling about the past. It isn't just sentimentality.
No, Dr. Medina's work reveals that nostalgia serves a vital structural cognitive function. When we indulge in the past, when we engage with older, slower technologies, or revisit memories or hold a physical object from our childhood, we are actively integrating our autobiographical memory with our present self.
Okay, and that creates
It creates a psychological state called self-continuity.
self-continuity. It's the feeling that you are an unbroken timeline. That the kid who rode a bike around the neighborhood 20 years ago is still fundamentally connected to the adult sitting in the office chair today.
Precisely. And in a world that changes as rapidly as ours, maintaining self-continuity is incredibly difficult.
Oh, absolutely.
The rules of society, the technology we use, the very nature of our jobs shift every 6 months. We feel disjointed, but when we achieve self-continuity through analog engagement, it acts as a massive psychological shield.
It grounds us.
It does. It fights off feelings of isolation, it defends against depressive episodes, and it promotes something the ancient Greeks called eudaimonia.
Eudaimonia.
Yeah.
This is such a critical distinction. It's not just happiness, right?
Right.
Because happiness in the modern sense is usually hedonia pleasure.
Right.
It's eating a donut or getting 100 likes on a post. It's a quick spike of dopamine.
Right. Hedonia is fleeting. Eudaimonia is a deep, sustained sense of flourishing. It's the well-being that comes from living authentically, from having purpose, and from feeling aligned with your own nature.
And it is virtually impossible to achieve eudaimonia in the environment we currently live in, which sociologists refer to as liquid modernity.
That concept, coined by Zygmunt Bauman, describes our current era perfectly. Think about your grandparents' era. That was solid modernity.
Solid
You
modernity.
got a job, you stayed for 40 years, you received a pension, you bought a washing machine, and you expected it to last for 3 decades. Institutions, relationships, and objects had solid intrinsic value.
But today, everything is liquid. Nothing holds its shape.
Exactly. In liquid modernity, everything is fluid, temporary, and upgradable. Your smartphone is designed to be obsolete in 2 years. Your software is a monthly subscription. Your job is a gig.
Right.
And ultimately, every action, every object is boiled down to its economic efficiency.
In liquid modernity, if a process isn't efficient, it is considered garbage. It's considered rogue.
But in this hyperfluid world, a fascinating counterculture is emerging. People who stubbornly stick to good old-fashioned ways are beginning to garner deep, quiet respect.
Really?
Yes, because by actively choosing inefficiency, by choosing the analog over the digital, they are maintaining their cognitive autonomy. They are refusing to hand their brains and their perception of time over to an algorithm.
We are planting a flag in the ground and saying, I dictate the pace of my life, not the machine. We can actually break down exactly why this works. The research provides this amazing framework, contrasting the analog experience with the digital experience across 3 categories.
Let's walk through it.
Starting with information.
In the digital realm, information is characterized by endless choices and black box algorithms. You scroll a feed, and you never really know why you are being shown a specific video, and more importantly, the supply never ends. There is no bottom.
And this causes the severe choice overload and working memory saturation we discussed earlier.
Exactly. But on the analog side, information has hard physical limits. If you go to a physical library or a bookstore, there are only so many books on the shelf. When you reach the wall, it's over.
It's done.
And rather than feeling limiting, that physical boundary actually relieves the brain. It cures decision fatigue because the environment makes the boundary for you.
The physical limitation provides neurological safety. I love that. The second category is senses. Digitally, our sensory experience is remarkably impoverished, isn't it?
It's almost entirely visual.
We stare at a flat piece of glass bathed in blue light while our bodies remain practically comatose. We might swipe a finger, but there is no real tactile feedback. Our visual cortex is hyperstimulated while our physical body is ignored.
In contrast, analog experiences demand the use of all 5 senses. Think about listening to a vinyl record versus streaming a song.
Oh, that's a great example.
With vinyl, you have the physical weight of the sleeve, the visual art, the smell of the cardboard. You have the tactile care required to slide the record out without scratching it. You have to physically align the needle, hear the mechanical pop and hiss, and then 20 minutes later, you have to stand up and flip it over.
And engaging all 5 senses in that slow, methodical way isn't just an aesthetic preference. It is biological medicine.
It really is.
When you engage the physical senses, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system. That is the network in your body responsible for rest and digest. It actively lowers your heart rate, decreases cortisol levels, and brings your physiology back into a state of equilibrium.
Which perfectly sets up the final and arguably most important category, time.
Right. Digitally, time is a tyrant. It is ruled by that obsession with type of efficiency and the demand for instant, frictionless replies. Time is a resource to be squeezed, optimized, and conquered.
Analog time is entirely different. Analog time is defined by slow, physical processes that you simply cannot hack.
You cannot optimize a garden.
You can't speedrun a tomato plant. You put the seed in the dirt, you water it, and you wait. You cannot double the speed of brewing a proper pot of loose-leaf tea. You just have to stand there while the water boils.
And those physical constraints create mental white space. I want you to really think about this right now.
Yeah.
Think about the last time you did something purely analog. Maybe it was gardening. Or maybe you were cooking a meal entirely from scratch, chopping vegetables on a wooden board without looking at a screen or a tablet for a recipe. Didn't time feel completely different?
Much slower.
Didn't it feel slower?
Richer. When you engage in those activities, you step out of liquid modernity and you step back into human time.
It makes me think of driving a car. Choosing an analog life is a lot like choosing to drive a manual transmission car in an age of self-driving electric vehicles.
Oh, I like that.
The manual car is objectively less efficient. It requires physical effort. It takes more concentration. But you feel the gears engaging. You feel the resistance of the road. You are the one driving, not the machine. You possess cognitive autonomy.
And that autonomy, that friction, is exactly what protects our mental health.
So We have covered a massive amount of ground today in this deep dive. We've looked at the Adlerian guilt of falling behind, the crushing weight of 35,000 micro-decisions, the reality of AI brain fry, the OCD loop of notifications, and the healing neurological power of nostalgia and analog constraints.
It's a lot to
It
process.
is. How do we synthesize all of this into a philosophy you can actually use?
The core thesis we can draw from this entire intersection of research is this. If you are feeling overwhelmed by artificial intelligence, by the endless cycle of software updates, and by the societal pressure to always be on, you need to realize that your exhaustion is a perfectly normal, highly functioning biological alarm bell.
It's supposed to be ringing.
Yes, you are not broken. You are not outdated. Your body is functioning exactly as it should. It is warning you that the environment has become toxic to your nervous system.
You don't need to silence the alarm with more productivity hacks. You need to listen to it.
Exactly. The researchers synthesized this approach into what they call the autonomous delay strategy, or we can simply call it digital resilience.
Digital resilience.
Choosing to ignore the latest tech trends, willfully embracing inefficiency in your personal life, and fiercely guarding your analog spaces, these are not the actions of a rogue guy or an old fool. This is a highly intelligent, intensely rational strategy. You are deploying physical boundaries to protect your mental health in an attention economy that is explicitly designed to strip mine your focus.
So what does this all mean? It means you have permission to stop. You have permission to be inefficient. True, lasting well-being in the future, that eudaimonia we talked about, isn't going to come from owning the smartest devices. It isn't going to come from being the fastest prompt engineer or having the most ruthlessly optimized calendar.
Not at all.
True well-being is going to come from actively, consciously choosing which parts of your life you want to keep wonderfully, stubbornly, and inefficiently human.
It is about drawing a hard boundary around your own humanity and refusing to let exponential technology cross it.
I want to leave you with one final thought, something to really chew on after this deep dive is over. We have spent the last 25 years treating internet access and constant digital connectivity as a fundamental human right.
The great equalizer.
Right, it was billed as the great equalizer. But looking at the trajectory of liquid modernity, looking at the psychiatric toll and the biological limits we've unpacked today, what if, in the very near future, the ultimate luxury status symbol isn't the newest AI gadget? What if the ultimate luxury is the guaranteed, legally protected right to be completely disconnected, unreachable, and totally analog?
This raises an important question about what society will value tomorrow. It's a fascinating reframe of luxury and freedom.
Something to think about the very next time you feel that anxious urge to check your phone. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep protecting your mental white space, and we'll catch you next time.